Hello everybody, Jake here for FM Scout, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you some tips to help you guys get better youth intakes in FM21. Whether you're new to Football Manager or you've been playing for a long time, I think we can all agree that developing them young players into your team, whether you sign them or whether they come through your youth intake, is one of the most fun parts of Football Manager. However, there's always that extra sense of satisfaction when you do develop a player at your club through your own youth intakes, in your own youth academies, it breaks into the first team. Yet on Football Manager it seems so hard, so random to actually get a good player come through your youth intake. So in today's video I'm going to be showing you a few steps to help these youth intakes have a better chance of being successful. If you do enjoy today's video, don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below any other videos like this you'd like to see, tutorials kind of thing, and subscribe to the channel if you are new or you've been watching for a while and haven't. But thank you to everyone for getting us to 100,000 subscribers recently. It's a massive milestone for the channel. I haven't been around here for that long, but it's great to see, and yeah, all of your guys' support has been immense, so thank you for that. And let's get into the first tip in this video. So, youth intakes, how can you improve them? Well, there's a few different factors that all combine together that make up your youth intake, but it is important to say that even if you did none of these things, there is still a random chance that your youth intake could be good, and if you do all of these things, there's still a chance your youth intake could be bad, because that's just how it is. But if you use the tips from these videos, you'll definitely have a better chance of getting them good youth intakes that sometimes seem to take every decade. Maybe you can whittle that down to every couple of years you get a good youth intake, because there is no set way to guarantee yourself a golden generation youth intake every year. What you need to kind of imagine it like is a lottery ticket. Most of the time you're not going to win the lottery, but if you do these tips, it's like buying a few extra tickets if you think about it like that. Just slowly improving your chances of getting them young players come through. Most football managers do follow the same kind of functions. This applies in FM21, but in FM20 I did all of these tips and managed to get 3 golden generation youth intakes in the space of 4 youth intakes with Vitesse in Holland, developing some absolute world beaters. So the first tip is the most obvious one, the one that most of you will probably know already, and that is on your club profile screen to go to facilities, and you can see at the bottom here, junior coaching and youth recruitment. Now it should be noted that Chelsea's youth setup is very, very good, and I am managing Chelsea here, so I've improved a few of the things already. If you want to see me manage Chelsea on my save on my channel, the link to that will be in the description. Thank you guys for all the support on there so far. We're recently about to hit 600 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing. I was on like 100 a few months back, so absolutely fantastic. But yes, junior coaching and youth recruitment are the first things you want to look at. Now, considering you are developing young players, I wouldn't blame you for thinking youth facilities do something but they don't. Imagine them as just the training facilities but for your development centre teams, whereas your junior coaching and your youth recruitment are something a little bit different. So, junior coaching and youth recruitment, what are they? How can you improve them? Well, youth recruitment, think of that about the scope of the players that you are getting in your youth intake. So rather than in Chelsea's case just being from the Chelsea area, the better your youth recruitment is, the wider that reach is. You might be pulling in some people from, who knows, Manchester. You get the kind of idea. You can pull people in from further, even from other countries sometimes. So that basically increases the range of players that you can get, therefore you're going to more likely pick up better players. And junior coaching is, imagine, you can't see it in Football Manager, but imagine your under 14s, under 12s, under 16 teams that you can't see. If you improve the coaching of them, the players are going to come out better, you're going to get better players in your youth intake. But obviously most teams won't have exceptional and exceptional. The way you change this is by going to make board request in the club vision screen. Don't mind all this is just from my Chelsea save. If you go to facilities, you can see it says decrease youth level. This is because it's already at the maximum here, I believe, and there is no option for me right now to increase it. But if your youth level is lower than like exceptional, whatever it was, I forget the exact terminology, then you will see an increase youth level option here. It will cost you a little bit of money, but increase the level of your youth recruitment. Similarly, if you want to increase your junior coaching, you go to the finance section, make a board request. If the board like you, they'll probably say yes, or if the board's club culture, club vision kind of thing is to do with young players, they'll often say yes to it because it matches their club culture. So you'd click increase junior coaching and that would increase that, and therefore give you a little more chance of getting a better youth intake. However, doing just this, for me at least, doesn't seem to work. Obviously it is down to chance, so some of you might do this and it will work, but there are other things you can add on to this to give yourself a better chance of getting a good youth intake. Now in a second I'm going to be showing you something you might not think about a lot, so stick around for that tip. But for tip number 2 is all to do with reputations, and that is reputations of your club, reputations of your league, and reputations of your nation. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you think in real life, quite often you see a lot of good young players come through England, Germany, Brazil, Argentina. You don't often see a San Marino young player come through, a Samoa young player, a Iceland young player. I know there are like odd occasions where that will happen, but the chances are less likely. And the reasons for that will be down to the reputations. First of all, club reputation, which you can see by going to club info, profile, and then you'll see your reputation in stars here. Anything above 4 stars will give you a good enough chance of getting a good youth intake, but don't get me wrong, if you have 1 star you can still get a good youth intake, because you've got to remember, if you produce a 5-star player in the 6th division of England, for you that's amazing at the time, so it's not really a big deal for you, but if that player came through at Chelsea's academy, he'd look bad. So you've got to remember your club reputation in terms of the player you're bringing through. But at the end of the day, we just want to bring through players who will benefit your team. So your club reputation is important, as is your league reputation, which you can see here, competition reputation. Premier League is very high, and you can kind of see what I mean about, you do see a lot of regens coming through from Belgium, Russia, Portugal, France, Italy, Germany, England, Spain, and that is because they are some of the more reputable competitions. However, if you go down to, let's say, what's down here, Bosnia and Herzegovina, to be fair, you do get some good Bosnian youngsters coming through, but like I say, the chances are less likely of an Albanian youngster than there is a German youngster. Now finally, if you go to the nations rankings, you can see some of the better nations in the world, and they will usually produce the best youngsters. So what is there you can do about this? There's nothing you can do like just go into the board and say, increase our reputation. That's not how it works. Really, the only way to increase your reputation is to play better, perform better, win more competitions. But yes, reputation is a very important thing in terms of the kind of caliber player you produce. So the next thing we're going to look at is staff, and in here is going to be a tip that I spoke about earlier that I think is very useful and I think isn't spoken about enough. So which of these staff members have an impact on your youth recruitment? Is it your youth staff? No, it's not. It's just your head of youth development, who you can find in this panel here, and I think it's this guy here, Neil Bath. There we go. Obviously, he has got very good coaching stats, and that's nice, but we're not using him as a coach. All of these things are good to have on a coach. I mean, this guy's absolutely flawless, really. But that's not important in a head of youth development, which you can see because if you highlight head of youth development, you can see the things are important. So working with youngsters is at the maximum 20, judging player potential, maximum 20, judging player ability is at 18. That's very high and very useful. But the thing that's more important than these stats, in my opinion, is the personality. And that's because if your head of youth development has a good personality, the players that come through will more likely have better personalities too, which is really important because you could have the next superstar come through, but if his personality isn't good enough, his determination won't be high enough, he won't develop into the kind of player that he should do, and your youth intake in that way will be a failure. Now, obviously, looking at the screen, Neil Bath looks flawless, right? He's going to produce some really good youth intakes. Well, in my Chelsea save, we didn't actually get a very good youth intake, and there's a few reasons for that, and a few more factors on this screen that are probably more important than even the personality. First of all, it's that word again, reputation. Neil Bath has a very good reputation. You'll find most head of youth developments won't have a reputation this high, so Neil Bath's reputation is actually good. Nothing to worry about there. If your head of youth development has 3-star reputation or higher, that's pretty good. You shouldn't need to worry too much about reputation. As it was with the leagues and the nations and the clubs, the higher the reputation, the better your chance of pulling in some good players in your youth intake. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't an expert in this until way before I was with FM Scout. I think last year or the year before, I was watching an FM Scout video about this thing, and it taught me quite a lot. But there was one thing that I don't remember being mentioned that I think is very, very important, and that is the staff member's preferred formation. So, you can see Neil Bath here prefers a 5-3-2 formation with a defensive midfielder and a wing-back. That's a very unique formation, and if we go to what I'm using with my Chelsea team here, it's quite a standard 4-2-3-1. Now, the problem with this is head of youth developments tend to pick up players that they prefer in their formation. For example, Neil Bath might pick up quite a lot of wing backs, a defensive midfielder, and 2 strikers by the looks of it, because that forms his formation. That's the kind of players he likes. The problem is here though, he's going to be bringing in wing backs when my system doesn't have wing backs. He's going to bring in too many strikers for my 1-striker system, which isn't the biggest problem in the world, but I don't think this is mentioned enough, and I think it's actually really important. So that is something to keep an eye on, but the final thing on this page you should be aware of is the world knowledge section, which you can see just here. This determines the kind of players that your head of youth development will bring in. Like I say, this all works in combination with all the other things. It's hard to say what is the most important and what doesn't really matter too much. It's just a combination of them that are basically giving you a better chance of having a good lottery ticket, if we still use that analogy. And you can see Neil Bath here has a really good world knowledge of England, but nothing else. So this means when he does his youth intakes, the majority of players, if not all of the players, will be from England. Now, this isn't the biggest deal if your scouting knowledge is good, which we'll have a look at later, but if you get a head of youth development that has a few more countries on here, preferably the nations that produce really good youngsters, for example, if he had England, Spain, Germany and Italy. That would be like the ideal combo, maybe with Brazil and Argentina if we're pushing our luck. Then you're more likely to pick up in your youth intake with Chelsea an Argentinian youngster. And that is quite a big factor. Now, it's not the end of the world because of scouting knowledge, which will be the next thing we look at. Because if you have scouting knowledges of other countries, it can kind of make up for Neil Bath's lack of world knowledge. So we're going to look into scouting knowledge now, and that is the final thing that will affect your youth intakes. So if you come to the scouting screen, I've got to say I'm someone who usually delegates my scouting responsibilities because I like going through the saves quite quickly. Go to the scouting screen, click knowledge, and you can see Chelsea are really good here in terms of the knowledge they have. So what does this all mean? Well, on the left here you can see the knowledge you have of regions. So your world knowledge, Chelsea's isn't very high here. 28% very broad isn't actually that bad at all. It's just because we're missing a lot of North America off here that we don't have very good world knowledge. But you can see we have good knowledge of Central Europe and the UK and Ireland. Now where does this come from? Well, it comes from your scouts and your scouting assignments. So you can see on the right here which nations we have a good knowledge of. So we've got England, Brazil, Italy, France, Belgium, Holland, all of the ones that you would want we have good scouting knowledge of. Now what this means is because you have knowledge of other countries, you've got a chance of bringing in players from that country in your youth intake. Just like we had Neil Bath having knowledge of England, these guys can help contribute to that. I don't think it has as much of an impact as your head of youth development's world knowledge, but this scouting knowledge will help you even just a little bit. Maybe if you bring in 20 players in your youth intake, one of them might be from, let's say, South Africa, and you'll know that that's from this. Now you can see which scout is bringing in that knowledge, so when you're looking at scouts, always keep an eye on the knowledge that they have, but you can increase their knowledge by sending them out on scouting assignments. So here, for example, I might be looking to send a scout to Mexico and America just to get some better knowledge of it, and we can also see we have poor knowledge here of the Asian regions and quite poor knowledge of the African regions too. And don't forget about them nations, by the way, because you really can find some good youngsters in these African nations. Youth intake or not, always keep an eye on them, and I would suggest sending some scouts over there. Because I'm not so hands-on in this Chelsea save, I haven't really done too much of it, but if I was doing a long-term save with a club that you're trying to build up through the leagues, this is something you definitely should keep an eye on. And all of this combined helps influence what players you bring through in your youth intake. So that is all the things that influence youth intake. Now, as I did say, there is no guaranteed thing. If you do all of these tips, you're going to have a better chance of getting a good one, but Football Manager is very stingy with how it is sometimes. Sometimes it is just down to pure luck. So to quickly recap, what you want to keep an eye on is your world knowledge, whether that's from your head of youth development or from your scouting knowledge. Then you want to make sure your head of youth development has good attributes, reputation, and if you want to, has a preferred formation that suits your style. Then you've got your junior coaching and youth recruitment network at a very high level. And finally, as your reputation increases, your league's reputation increases, the nation increases, as will the quality of a player that comes through in your youth intake. So hopefully you guys learned something from this video. Thank you for all your support on our channel recently. Don't forget to like the video and comment down below what you'd like to see next. I have been Jake for FM Scout. Thank you very much for watching and for all your support, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.